Why I said I ride for Trey, because everybody's down on the guy. Selling his jerseys 50% off. Everybody's saying that he's a bust after just 4 games. The guy threw 31 passes last year in less than 5 quarters of football. Now, let's be real. Against Seattle, they went right down the field. They kicked a field goal. They were going right down the field again right before he got hurt. It could have been up 10-0, scoring on the first 2 possessions there. You look at the Texans game, which you need it because that was a playoff game, whether you like it or not. And the pressure of coming in and replacing Jimmy Garoppolo, knowing that, boy, if we lose, 1, the fan base is going to say I'm not ready. Well, they're saying that already anyway. But 2, we lose, we don't have a chance to go to the playoffs for the second time in 5 seasons. That's back in 2022. Well, what does Trey Lance do? Or, 2021. What does Trey Lance do? He helps the Niners score on 5 of their last 7 possessions of that football game to get to L.A. to have a chance to get to the playoffs. But we just dismissed that. And we look at the monsoon game in which he started off great, right? Throwing the pass to Ayuk, Debo fumbles, he gets sacked on the next possession. Yeah, I get it. He missed Tyler Kroft, but I always wondered, what if that was George Kittle running under that pass? What if it was? They lose, whatever. Trey Lance, he struggled. But let's not act like we didn't see Jimmy Garoppolo struggle in season openers. But this caught my eye, or it caught my ears. Driving to go pick up baby Chez. I walked the lake yesterday with my guy front office. What up, Igor? Walked the lake yesterday. Nice little walk, chatted. It's my buddy from 9th grade. And I happened to turn on the radio when I got in the car, and I heard this from Mark Willard. And it sounded like he had so much disgust in his voice. Just listen to this clip.
Okay.
If Bonta were in here, I guess I'd ask this. Like, beyond what do you mean, like, I'm still riding with this guy? Like, if your reason for wanting to start Trey Lance is something football related, I'd love to hear it. I guess that would be my question. What's the football related reason? I don't want to hear about draft. I don't want to hear about expectation. I don't want to hear about money. I don't want to hear about height. I don't want to hear about speed, politics, draft capital. None of that. What's your football reason?
So the way he said, Mark Willard, what do you mean you ride with Trey? What do you mean? It was like my father or something scolded me. What are you doing riding with Trey Lance? Are you sick? What is your problem? Well, I'm riding with Trey because I still think there's something there, number one. In terms of football relation on why I believe Trey can be a good quarterback, because he does have all the attributes to be a good quarterback in a quarterback user system, which I want to see him used as. Now, did I say he was going to start week 1? Absolutely not. If Brock Purdy's healthy, I get he's going to be the starter. But I still have hope, and I still have trepidation that Brock Purdy's even going to be ready for week 1 or week 2 or week 3. We shall see. But in terms of Sam Darnold, like we're already elevating Sam Darnold above Trey Lance, like we don't have all the data on him. I'd rather wait and see on him and say, Trey, here's another shot. And I get it. It's not a charity. You got to go win football games. He's got to go out there and take the spot. He's got to go out there and earn it. And he's got to do motion and all that stuff. He's got weapons. He's get to play with Christian McCaffrey. We just forget. We forget as a fan base and as a media group here in the Bay Area. How many games did he play with George Kittle in his career, in those 4 games?
I don't think any of them.
1 time.
Oh, okay.
He played with George Kittle 1 time.
Okay.
Against the Houston Texans in a game that they won going away. Didn't play with George Kittle against Arizona when they lost by a touchdown in his first ever start.
Okay.
When he ran the ball 16 times, right? Didn't play with George Kittle out in Chicago. Debo Samuel's out of shape.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm riding with Trey Lance because I still believe there's something there while everybody's kicking him down and just elevating Sam Darnold. I'm saying, you know what? I'm going to ride with Trey. I think Trey's better than him, and he's got better prospects. And on the football field, I've seen more from – you can make the argument that you've seen more from Trey Lance in 4 games than you've seen from Sam Darnold in 5 years. I can make that argument.
Okay. I would just say, what are the football reasons? Well, the football reasons are very simple to me. Like, why would keep? It's not even ride with whatever.
Right.
Just, I want a team that's deep. Number one, because this position under my tenure, if I'm Shanahan, is been spotty in terms of the health. I've had a tough time. Either the guys are injury prone or they're randomly getting injured, and we're stuck at the end of the year with a guy with bandages all over him or a 4/5 stringer, right? So that's why I would keep a guy number one. So I live by the Bill Walsh theory, and I always will go by the Bill Walsh theory. I'd have as many quarterbacks on the roster at all times because you never know. Heck, people forget. When the Chiefs went on to win a game a couple years ago, Chad Henne had to come in and finish the game because Mahomes got knocked out. I think history's forgotten that, but remember Chad Henne, and I don't even think that highly of Chad Henne. So you got to have some depth at some level, right? I also go by this one. Why are we ready to throw someone away who's under team control? I know he makes a little more this year than you would like.
$10 million.
Yeah, believe me, I get it. And I'm not saying I would even exercise his fifth-year option after this year. Like, let's see what happens. This whole pay everyone. No. Let's see what happens. I want to read you a guy who I believe, and again, times are different. He went to one of the worst teams, but he had a lot of playing time before that in the USFL. I want to go to Steve Young, one of my favorite players of all time. Okay? He started his career 3-16.
Yep.
He started his career with 11 touchdowns, 21 interceptions, and 1 million fumbles.
With the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
He was a 52% completion percentage guy. Okay? Now, I know it's the 80s. It's one of the worst teams ever in Tampa Bay, but the point still remains. And he had a long way to go in terms of his development. He really only had like a year and a half as a starter at BYU because there were some great guys in front of him. He was a guy who went from running back to quarterback. It took a while. But I look at someone like him and I go, Steve Young, those are the kind of guys that when you have the kind of skill sets, I'm not saying you'll become him, but you got to be patient.
Yep.
And even if you have to develop him on the practice squad as time goes on, what's the hurt?
Right.
How does it hold your team back?
No doubt.
You're already locked in paying him this year because of the dead money.
Right.
How does it help you for this year to move off that guy? Now, I still have Brock. He could be my number one. Let's see where the health goes. I still have Sam Darnold. Let's see if they can build him up into something.
But
why are we in a rush to bury someone?
But I'm trying to find in my tweet where I said Trey Lance is going to start over Brock Purdy, and he should start over Brock Purdy. I never said that. I said I'm right with Trey Lance strictly due to everybody kicking him down, saying that, oh, he's a bust, he's not good. We've seen enough already from him. We've already made the determination that he can't play NFL quarterback.
Did we do the same thing about Jimmy Ward?
No. Oh, yeah, we did.
How about Eric Armstead?
We did that a lot.
So two guys on this team, and Jimmy's moved on, who... Yeah, I don't really know what position they play. I don't know. I don't know if they can stay healthy. I don't know. Like, they don't have that dog in them. They look like busts. And I was wrong on both of those players.
And they stuck it out.
Can we be a little more patient before we throw guys away?
But it feels like we're selective in our patience. How patient were we with Jimmy Garoppolo?
Oh,
we were forced to be patient with Jimmy Garoppolo.
I don't think people realize how ugly it looked in those couple games.
The first three games, the Detroit game, he got bailed out by the pick six. It was a terrible defensive holding call.
Chiefs game?
He was off. They were down 35-7.
Patrick Mahomes on that field that day, because that was the year he had the MVP. That was just like second
start or third start.
Yeah, he looked like I was watching God versus...
Dude,
I don't even
know.
And
they were roasting Richard Sherman in that game at Arrowhead Stadium. We watched that game right here, 10 in the morning. It was awful. Jimmy Garoppolo looked awful in 4 of his 5 openers for the 40. Threw 3 picks against the Minnesota Vikings. Got yelled at by Shanahan against Tampa Bay. My boy Jason from TNT was at the game saying, yo, Jimmy stinks. Get this guy out of the game. I'm ready to see Mullins. I'm like, whoa, calm down here. Let's not go to Nick Mullins. But Jimmy got better. We stayed patient with Jimmy Garoppolo. Shanahan did. And they rode it out to the Super Bowl in which they lost because Shanahan didn't have patience with his play calling. We'll argue about
back
that.
To your tweet.
But back to the tweet. Trey Lance, 4 games. And we know how the Chicago game looked. Context matters. What did everybody say? Boy, it was impossible to throw the football once you got behind in the fourth quarter. I was there. Well, you watched it on television. You couldn't even see the yard markers.
But when you say, like your tweet says riding with him, so I'm left to interpret. So let me ask you this. When you say riding with him, does that mean to you, the way you put it out there, he's my number one guy? Or is it, I'm just not ready to move off him?
That's exactly what it meant.
Okay.
Because I understand Brock Purdy's the guy.
But that's reasonable.
That's reasonable, right?
To say that I'm not, keep going.
I don't believe Brock Purdy's going to be ready by week 1. I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, that's a whole separate conversation.
That's an entirely separate conversation. We'll talk to David Lombardi today at 8:30 about that. because there's a lot of talk about him dinking and dunking, which I don't want to get into.
But here's what I don't understand. Like, and I would say this to Mark, too, because he's so quick to write off the young players. And I would just ask him, like, bro, we're the same fan base that made 7,000 excuses for Alex Smith.
Right.
We're the same fan base that makes excuse after excuse for Jimmy Garoppolo, who's constantly injured.
But listen to the way he said, Bonta's riding with Trey. Just listen to this.
If Bonta were in here, I guess I'd ask this. Like, beyond what do you mean? Like, I'm still riding with this guy. Like, if your reason for wanting to start Trey Lance is something football related, I'd love to hear it.
So the way he said, right, like he was like disgusted. Now, first of all, I'm glad I could provide some content to the afternoon show.
This is fun banter.
Yeah, no, it's good banter.
I think everything's all in fun.
No
Everybody loves each other. No, this isn't some beef or anything.
I wouldn't say everybody loves each other, but it's not a beef.
I love you and I love him.
It's not a beef. But context matters. So I was listening to them. They were like, he was 15-31 last year. Well, he was 2 or 3 in the Seattle game. Got the Niners in the red zone twice. And in Chicago, we know what the conditions. And it got ugly in the fourth quarter. Ugly. We were all at that. Hell, he was at that football game. He was at that game when the Niners were up 10-0. When we pointed back to that game, when we talked about it that week, what were we discussing? Dre Greenlaw lost control. Who blew the coverage? Was it who blew the coverage there on Dante Pettis? Was it
Gibson?
Was it Tashawn Gibson?
I might have known it was Hufanga.
Was it
who
Hufanga?
Came flying up? I think it was Hufanga. Who
he
had
blew the
actually a good
coverage.
game.
Justin Fields, one of the few throws he made in that game, hits St. Brown in the back of the end zone, busted coverage. Not stopping the run there late in the fourth quarter. We came out of that game saying the defense let the Niners down. By the way, Deebo Samuel fumbling on the first drive when you're rolling there to go up 7-0 completely flips that football game. Now we don't have enough. We don't have enough evidence to say that Trey Lance is a bust. And that's why I see too much. And Sam Darnold, you want to talk about patience? Sam Darnold's been in this league for 5 years. We've had 5 years of data. Now, does Sam Darnold get an excuse? Like, hold on.
Yes, he does.
Sam Darnold gets an excuse that he doesn't have a lot of weapons around him.
Yes.
Why doesn't Trey Lance get the excuse that George Kittle hasn't played in 3 to 4 games he started?
Because people would say that they have better weapons outside of, George Kittle around those guys, and we can argue till we're blue in the face on that. Like, Darnold did have McCaffrey.
Yeah.
And didn't do anything with him, right? So I don't know. Like I hear everything you're saying, and I think I see both sides of the equation. But I guess when you're asking, like, what does the guy do on a football field? From what you've seen thus far, and I know there's been some spotty, whether it's decision making, accuracy. Like we can pick apart a lot of guys' game. What does he do well on the football field right now?
Trey Lance?
Yeah,
Trey Lance. I think can be a bit more accurate. He needs to improve his accuracy, but I think his arm making all the throws on the football field. Do we ever dismiss him making any throw on the football field?
No, he's hit some layered throws.
Layer throws.
Yeah, I think the layups, the shorter stuff is where I think people are. And I've noticed, and again, it's practices, but I've noticed that he's taken a little off, and he's still got decent velocity, but he's taken a little off. And Ayuk referenced it's a much more catchable ball this year.
Exactly.
And I think that matters because the one area that you have to be accurate in this system is on the dinking and dunking.
No doubt.
I think that's an area that he really needs to grow.
I think another aspect of his game that I'm really impressed with was he's not afraid to sit in the pocket. He's not quick to jolt out of the pocket. He'll step up in the pocket and still make a throw. Mm-hmm. A lot of people had this notion that he was a runner coming out. Oh, man, this guy's going to run like Lamar Jackson. Well, we noticed early on, this guy likes to stay in the pocket and sling it, all right? And he can sling it with the best of them. So I do think he needs to work on the dinking and dunking, but hitting throws in the pocket, the throw to Juwan Jennings down the left sideline over the top, I think he throws it over the top very, very well. Hitting drag routes, crossing routes, I think he does that very well, hitting receivers in his stride.
What we don't know is he getting the plays right in the huddle, which is something a lot of young quarterbacks struggle. I don't know. I don't know.
I've never heard anything
that
he
I
wasn't.
I'm just saying. Like, these are things that we don't know. What's his demeanor like on a good play, on a bad play? What is his leadership inside that huddle? Do his guys respect him and his work ethic? Again, we don't know any of those things. But I'm not questioning them. But I'm saying I see people question those things, and I kind of find it unfair.
But why are we? I guess my issue as a fan base and as media, 4 games. Is 4 games enough to make a determination on somebody?
Well, here's what I would say to you. I've got way more evidence that Javon Kinlaw isn't that great.
Right.
as opposed to Trey Lance.
We just haven't
and
seen
I don't
it
see
yet.
any narrative around Javon Kinlaw as aggressive because it's a D tackle versus a quarterback, as aggressive as that. Solomon Thomas, we were much more graceful with in terms of discussing his play. Solomon Thomas, he's not very good. I mean, he's just love the guy. Everybody likes the guy. He's just not very good. I mean, he's just not, Bonta.
So I would love to see this.
And the Solomon Thomas thing, real quick on that, they've had to overpay at every turn to overcompensate for the miss of Solomon Thomas from the get-go.
No doubt.
They thought he was a DN, but really he was a D tackle. So they've thrown money at D4, which they did prior, but threw money at what's his face, Javon Kinlaw in terms of draft capital. They've now paid for Hargraves. Like they've thrown a lot at that position to overcompensate for the two misses in Solomon Thomas and in Javon Kinlaw, which I don't think a lot of people want to discuss because it's not as sexy as a quarterback.
No doubt. Next Gen Stats had a tweet yesterday. Niners were able to transition from Jimmy G to Brock Purdy in part because the offense creates easy throwing windows. No quarterback had a higher expected completion percentage than Jimmy Garoppolo, 69%, or Brock Purdy, 69% in the regular season, minimum of 150 pass attempts. And we're talking about easy throws. And, I don't think there's a such thing as an easy throw in the NFL. It's hard throwing with all that speed, all these guys coming at you. You got to make plays.
Every throw's hard.
You got to make plays. My whole thing is 4 games is enough to determine whether or not Trey Lance is a bust. 4 games? 4 games. When we saw, we just throw away, we throw away the Houston game. It's nothing. A playoff game, got to have it. Did Trey Lance not make major league throws in that football game? Not getting through the pick, trying to force it into George Kittle, and he missed deep ball wide open. But we haven't seen enough of Trey to say, hey, this guy's a bust. And I think the Niners owe it to him. Speaking of which, Ryan Leaf said this.
I want to get into that.
Ryan Leaf said this on Willard and Dibs the other day about what the Niners need to do to see from Trey Lance.
You kind of stumbled into Joe Montana with Brock Purdy, then that's the decision you make. If that's the case, I would have assumed that they would have traded Trey Lance this offseason. They would have done something. Maybe because of the injury to Brock Purdy, they wanted to cover their bases. I just thought that simply because of everything that they invested, the draft capital, all of it, what Kyle Shanahan said last year going into the season with Trey Lance and how he was going to fit in this offense, that if all things being equal, you have to find that out. I mean, you have to. Now, could it be at a deficit to the team? I don't think so. I think the team can overcome all that, and ultimately you'll figure out who your starting quarterback is. But I do. I think that Trey Lance has to be the answer going into this season, and you better get your answer. And if you don't, then I don't know what this has all been about.
So, Brock Purdy, 8 games, he looked really, really good. But is he the guy? Are we bought in that he's the guy for this team coming off an elbow injury?
Based off that who was that was
Ryan Leaf. That's Ryan Leaf. Who knows a thing or two about NFL football and didn't have a great career, to say the least.
Well, I mean, he's got perspective. But I would say that you were talking about owing, and they owe it to themselves to try to win a Super Bowl. So that's what they owe. They owe it to themselves.
I don't think I said anything about owing Trey Lance.
No. But I'm saying, he was talking about, you got to see, well, what's all this for? All this is to win a Super Bowl. That's what everything is. And so you play the best man and the guys who think that they can help you win a Super Bowl, whether that be Brock Purdy, whether he can get healthy and do that. And I have questions on that, which we can knock around, whether that's Sam Darnold, whether that's Trey Lance. That is going to be the number one thing for Shanahan, because where they're at in their life cycle, to me, this feels like their last great chance to win a Super Bowl based on ages and contracts and things that are coming down the pipeline. And if Brock Purdy is what everyone wants him to be and could be and should be, you're going to have to pay him at some point.
No doubt.
And that's going to affect the rest of the roster.
I'll say this right now. Does Brock Purdy give the Niners a better chance to win the Super Bowl than Trey Lance? Right now, he does. Brock Purdy gives the Niners a better chance to win the Super Bowl. But miss me with the Sam Darnold stuff. And that's where my riding with Trey really came from.
Gotcha.
It's too much Sam Darnold rhetoric.
Gotcha.
Way too much on Sam Darnold. We just forgot how bad he was so far in his NFL career. And Matt Burrows came on last week and said he was indecisive in 7-on-7.